Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking an incredible journey back in time. We're going to explore a truly dramatic transformation, how a city literally reduced to ashes by fire rose up to become an absolute global superpower. We are talking about 1700s Georgian London, a place of booming extremes and incredible architectural rebirth.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to actually walk the streets of the world's greatest metropolis nearly 300 years ago? Well, thanks to advanced AI software analyzing actual 18th century paintings and engravings, we can now visualize exactly that. We can see the architecture, the streets, the people, and truly experience the atmosphere of London as its citizens once did.
Think of this as our virtual tour itinerary down the River Thames, which is going to help us really grasp the macro themes of the era. We'll hit 1. The reborn Georgian skyline. 2. Gateway to maritime dominance. 3. The heights of high society. 4. Fortress of royal power. And 5. Engines of global finance.
Starting with Section 1, the reborn Georgian skyline. We're setting the scene right from the River Thames, which, by the way, was the absolute beating heart of commerce and the world's largest port.
Now, viewing the city from a bird's eye view over the water, essentially the 18th century highway, you immediately spot the catalyst for all this transformation, the Great Fire of 1666. It completely destroyed the medieval city. But, out of that catastrophe came massive opportunity. By 1710, Sir Christopher Wren's magnificent St. Paul's Cathedral was finished, totally dominating the new skyline. And right alongside it stood the monument to the Great Fire, serving as a permanent reminder of the destruction that fundamentally reshaped the city in such grand style.
The sheer scale of this reborn city was just staggering. London boasted a massive population of over 500,000 people. It was a city of absolute extremes, really, a booming metropolis plagued by chaos, but also driving massive transformation. Yet, even with all this rapid modernization going on, some quirky medieval hangovers stuck around. For example, the famous Old London Bridge was still completely lined with houses and shops, exactly as it had been for centuries. Crazy, right?
Moving on to Section 2, Gateway to Maritime Dominance. We're heading over to the iconic viewpoint of One Tree Hill in Greenwich Park, a site of immense scientific significance.
This elevated spot was incredible because it allowed visitors to survey the entire magnificent approach to the capital. It's a view that captivated artists and writers for centuries. But it's also one of the most scientifically significant spots on Earth. This very location would later be chosen in 1884 as the prime meridian, literally the global center point for measuring longitude.
And if you look closely at Greenwich Hospital, which was completed in 1751, and compare it to Les Invalides in Paris, you'll see something fascinating. Greenwich was this stunning Baroque masterpiece designed by Christopher Wren and Nicholas Hawksmoor. Sure, it was built as a home for retired naval seamen, essentially serving as Britain's version of Les Invalides, but more importantly, it was a loud, proud statement in stone declaring Britain's absolute dominance of the seas to the rest of the world. Section 3. The heights of high society. Now, what's really interesting about this next bit is how we move into the West End to explore the exclusive enclaves of the aristocracy. It's actually wild to see how these famous squares were used back then compared to today. Take Leicester Square, for instance. In the mid-1700s, it was a total magnet for aristocratic and artistic genius. Leicester House hosted members of the royal family. The painter William Hogarth lived at number 31, and Sir Joshua Reynolds had his portrait studio right across at number 47. Then you had St. James's Square, which was the absolute pinnacle of aristocratic London, packed to the brim with dukes, earls, and prime ministers. Today, obviously, Leicester Square is all about entertainment, and St. James's is known for modern clubs and institutions. But honestly, St. James's Square wasn't always so elegant. Before the 1720s, the residents complained bitterly, describing the square as rude and in great disorder. It was muddy, neglected, and frankly, a huge embarrassment for such prestigious addresses. But that all changed when royal gardener Charles Bridgeman stepped in. He completely transformed the space, adding this massive 150-foot wide basin of water surrounded by stone obelisks and ironwork. He finally gave the nobility the pristine environment they were demanding. On to Section 4, Fortress of Royal Power. Crossing back over the Thames, those imposing stone walls perfectly transition us from high society to formidable royal defense. Seen from the water, which was serving as both its moat and its highway, the Tower of London truly commanded respect. At its heart is the White Tower,
This is a massive Norman keep built way back in 1078 by William the Conqueror, using stone imported all the way from France. By the 1700s, this place was the ultimate multi-purpose facility. I mean, it was operating simultaneously as a royal palace, a highly secure prison, a military armory, the royal mint, and the treasury for the crown jewels. Talk about doing it all.
And right there on the waterfront was Traitor's Gate. This was the infamous water entrance where prisoners, including Anne Boleyn and Sir Thomas More, arrived by barge just before their executions. It's quite a heavy contrast when you realize the Thames was London's main commercial artery. Every single day, regular merchant ships and trading vessels passed right beneath the highly watchful and sometimes deadly gaze of the crown.
And finally, Section 5, Engines of Global Finance. This is our last stop on the tour, highlighting how London's merchant class built their massive empires one transaction at a time. While the crown obviously held the fortress, the real power of the 18th century was rapidly shifting to commerce, starting in streets like Cheapside. Now the name comes from the Old English word chop, meaning marketplace. But by Georgian times, this was no simple market. It was an incredibly wide avenue where you could buy everything from fine silks and jewelry to exotic spices. Think of it as the Oxford Street and Wall Street of the 1700s rolled into one single bustling commercial center. Rising beautifully above Cheapside was the steeple of St. Mary le Bow, which was yet another masterpiece rebuilt by Christopher Wren. And this actually gives us a fantastic piece of cultural history. The famous Bow bells up in that steeple literally defined what it meant to be a true Cockney. Anyone born within the sound of those specific bells could claim that proud title. It's pretty amazing how a modern cultural term is physically anchored to this specific 18th century architectural space. But the true epicenter of all this wealth, that was the Royal Exchange. I want you to just picture the intense sensory chaos of this open-air trading courtyard. Twice daily, the tower bell would ring, and merchants from across the globe would gather. Deals were being shouted in dozens of languages, bills of exchange were rustling in the wind, and you'd hear quills scratching furiously on contracts. Meanwhile, the arcaded walkways up above housed shops selling luxury goods. And right there, in those very galleries, Lloyd's of London operated their booming insurance business. The legacy of the Royal Exchange is just staggering. Founded by Sir Thomas Gresham in 1565, it was originally modeled after the Antwerp Bourse, but it successfully consolidated global commerce into one single magnificent building. This was literally the prototype that transformed London into a financial superpower, cementing its status on the world stage. And its model went on to inspire modern stock exchanges absolutely everywhere, from New York to Hong Kong. So, we've traveled from the ashes of the Great Fire to the heights of high society, past the royal fortresses and right into the birthplaces of global finance. Georgian London wasn't just a place in time, it laid the structural and cultural foundations of the modern world. So I leave you with this question. What echoes of this 18th century empire are hiding in plain sight on the streets you walk today? Next time you walk through a major city, look past the modern glass and steel and ask yourself what layers of history are lying just beneath your feet. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.